Kasparov is back. The 13th world champion is playing a Fischer-random tournament against the stars of nowadays. And to make it even more symbolic, the ex-world champion, the 57 years old ex-world champion, is playing against the 17 years old Alireza Firouzja. So this is a Fischer-random tournament. So the starting position is actually randomized, and we can see that it looks like very different from the usual ones. So the white has, well, actually both players have the knights in the corner. The c1 bishop is actually on its usual place. There is the rook in the middle, king as normal. Queen is now at the other side. There is this rook on the g file and the bishop on h1. And actually the players have some time to study the starting position, but it turned out that Kasparov studied the wrong starting position. So, well, Firouzja had quite some advantage here. The game starts quite predictably. So Firouzja plays the move g3 to open up his bishop. Comes d5, d4 and g6. Kasparov also opens his bishop. Knight c3, c6, knight b3, and here, so knight b3 reinforces his d4 pawn, and the idea of white is to play e4 soon. But Kasparov says, no, I don't want you to occupy the whole center, so I'm going to play f5 to stop you from it. Now comes f3, knight c7, queen f2, knight e6. Here comes a first strange looking move, bishop d2, but the idea is that white want to castle long. And after knight d7, Firouzja indeed castled long. To long castle came knight b6. So now there's knight c4 idea, maybe taking this bishop. So Firouzja played bishop c1, comes queen f6, bishop c1 anyway, knight c4, and rook ge1. So here again, white prepares to play this e4 move. So the idea is that probably white moves his queen away and then plays the move e4. So here it's Kasparov's turn to castle, and he's going to castle short. So Kasparov castled short here, came queen g1 with the idea to finally play e4. But Kasparov says, no, I don't want you to do all of this, so he plays the move f4. Firouzja takes, knight f4, e3, and the knight goes to h3. Here comes queen g3 and queen g5. And after rook f1, we are exchanging the queens. So now we can see that actually this knight on h3 from Kasparov is pretty much out of the play. So his position would be pretty alright, but all he has to do, all Kasparov has to do, is solve the problem of this knight. Plays the move e5. Firouzja takes, bishop takes e5, and after f4 it becomes even more apparent that this knight is actually very much out of the game. And also in this position, for some reason Kasparov doesn't take on c3, which looks just such a normal move, ruining the pawn structure of the opponent. So would have been more normal. But after f4 bishop g7, it starts to become clear that actually black is not doing all that well. Here comes rook d1, rook d1, g5 from Kasparov, so he really tries to do something with his knight. Comes bishop g2, bishop f5. It's again a little bit strange move from the ex-world champion. He really moves into the move e4. And actually the best continuation from Firouzja would have been indeed to play e4. The idea is that after d takes e, knight xt, knight takes gf, gf, this knight is still just totally out of the game. Could be some rook h1 coming, really taking this knight. So white's advantage is actually quite huge. But instead of this, bishop f5, Firouzja played another move that's very natural, knight d4, attacking this bishop, and now basically forcing black, or actually not forcing, but wanting black to really finally give up his dark squared bishop. The best move would have been here to just hang on to this bishop and play bishop g4, but this is not what Kasparov did, he just took on d4. And after e takes d, he played the move g4. So now it's clear that this knight is actually not going to be taken or trapped, however it's still very much out of the game. So white's advantage, Firouzja's advantage is actually really huge here. The only problem for this youngster is that he played quite slow compared to Kasparov, and Kasparov has a lot more time on his clock. So now comes b3, knight d6, bishop e3, nice move to spin along this diagonal. Comes rook f7, rook e5, rook looks just beautiful on e5. Comes h5, so Kasparov's idea is to play at some point h4 and then try to take some knight f4 to rescue his knight. Now comes king b2, king g7, and here Firouzja decided to exchange his dark squared bishop so that he will have reasonable control over the e4 square, and after rook d6 he can just play knight d1 with the idea of rerouting to knight to e3. Here came rook e6, knight e3, takes, king g6. So again, if we stop here for a while, it's very clear that white is doing just very well. The most natural plan will be just put the king on d4 and then look around what we can do. Maybe starting to weaken the opponent on the queen side with b4, a4, b5, plans like this. But as mentioned before, Firouzja had little time on the clock, and for some reason he really wanted to force the issue. So he played the move c4. And after d4, his idea was to take on f5. When black takes black, plays bishop rook e1, with the idea that bishop e4 check is going to come, f5 is going to come, and probably Firouzja thought that his two central connected pass pawns are going to kill the ex-world champion Garry Kasparov. But well, Kasparov was a world champion for so long for a reason, and he played the move h4. So this is the rescue plan of the knight. If you take, then finally the knight can get out. So Firouzja's plan was to play bishop e4 check, king e6, and f5. So now it seems that if black has to go back, then these two pawns are just going to be winning. However, Kasparov calculated more precisely than the youngster and took on e5, sacrificing the exchange. Came bishop d5 check, king f6, bishop f7, and here Kasparov took back on f7. And it turns out that actually these two pawns, now finally with the protection of the help with this knight, which turns out to be finally strong, is just not just enough, but actually more than enough counterplay for black, and actually Kasparov is just winning in this position. There's not much white can do here. Black is going to take here, the king is going to come up, and this g-pawn is going to be a queen soon. Firouzja played the move rook e2, hg, rook g2, king f6, takes, and well, actually if we just count the material, black is doing also alright already in material, got 2 pawns for the exchange, but more importantly, this pawn is just going to queen. Here came c5, king f4, rook d3. Well, Kasparov doesn't even need his d-pawn anymore. g3, rook d4, king e3, rook h4, knight f2, and after rook h7, g2, the 40 years younger Alireza Firouzja resigned to the ex-world champion. So this was the first game. Very nice victory from Garry. And while the second game was the game that everybody was just waiting for, the clash between Garry Kasparov, ex-world champion, and the current world champion, former student of Kasparov, Magnus Carlsen. So I already made a video about that, so you can, I'll link it in the description, you can check that one out. And well, my next videos are also going to be about this event, about this Fischer chess event, so see you in them as well.